Hi everyone, welcome back. Okay, so we have created three types of lines. Alright, so let's say the single arrow, a line, and double arrow. Deactivate, I can select all of them. So now for this part of the video, we will be talking about how to show the length and the angle of the line. So for instance, let's say I have a line. Okay, as you can see, I know what is the length as I extend out and what is the angle. Alright, so we will be doing this in this video. Alright, so let's go to the editor. And over here, excuse me, over here in my HTML, I actually have created a div. Okay, and I gave it an ID of length, angle, container. And I have a few span. The first one, I gave it an ID of length of line. And for the time being, okay, I'll just say is 1024. And this is the unit for the length, which is in pixels. And the next span would be angle of line. Okay, and let's say it's 280 and the unit is degrees. Alright, and in my CSS, for the length angle container, okay, so I position it to be absolute. Display would be none for the time being. Background color, I chose black and an opacity of 0.7, but you can choose any other color you want to. Padding is 5 pixels, font size 16 pixels, font weight. The color of the font, okay, white. And I chose a width of 120 pixels and text align, I made it center. And the angle of line, I shifted a little bit more, okay, so it won't be all cramped up. So it's 10 pixels margin left. So means this 280 is 10 pixels away from this unit pixels over here. Alright. So now, in our main.js file, okay, we will be getting all the necessary details, okay. And one of them, the first one would be to find out the center of the line. So as you can see over here, this container is positioned at the center. Alright, so we need to find out what is the center coordinates of the line. And this is how we can do it. So function, so get center coordinates. And there are a few parameters that I want to pass through, and this the parameters will be sx, sy, ex, ey. Now sx and sy are the starting point of the line. Okay, so sx is the x coordinates of the starting point and sy is the y coordinate of the starting point. Ex and ey, they are the end, the coordinates of the end point. Okay, so over here, in order to find the middle, alright, we can say let cx, which is the x coordinate of the center, and this will be sx plus ex divided by 2. Alright, and let cy equals to sy plus ey divided by 2. So we need to return this, okay, and we return this cx value and cy value. Alright, so I return an object. The object is cx and cy. Okay, so now we put this function in the mouse move event. Okay, so as we move the mouse, we want to calculate where is the center. So on mouse move, drawing shape on mouse move, we can do it, I think over here, this should be alright. So we can say, let center x be equals to this and dot cx, but now it's not sx and sy. So sx is actually, so what I can do is to bring this over here. Okay, and sx is actually the start point x, and sy is the start point y. Okay, and ex is this, and ey is this. All right, so now I have gotten the center. Okay, x coordinate of the center. So let's do the y coordinate of the center. So this should be cy. Okay, let's console.log this. Console.log center x, console.log center y. All right, I'm going back here. So as you can see, okay, we have the x coordinate of the center and the y coordinate of the center over here. All right, and the s coordinate, so it does change. So let me refresh this, and let's say if I extend out, okay, so it does change for the coordinates of the center depending on how long or how short the line is. So like, let's say for this length, excuse me, the s coordinate is 918, the y coordinate is 186, so it's somewhere around here. But at the beginning, okay, let's say for this, 581.5 is the x coordinate of the center, and center y is 228. So it does change depending on the length of the line. Okay, so now that we have these two coordinates, we can position our container. Okay, and our container is this length angle container to that position. So we will grab the ID first, then dot star dot left would be center x, and because this is the star, we have to add the pixels as well, the unit. Okay, so we will do the same for the top position of this container, and this will be center y. And we have to make display to be a block. Okay, because initially it was none. So if I do not have this, all right, we wouldn't be able to see the length angle container. Okay, so now the display is block, and let's see what happens. All right, as you can see, the container shows up and it's at the center, but okay, the container, all right, it is positioned at the top left. Okay, but we want it to be right in the middle of the container as well. So I gave this container a width of 120 pixels. So if it must be in the middle over here, I have to subtract 60 pixels. Okay, and the height, all right, we need to give a height also. So for convenience sake, let's say we give the height to be, so width is 120 pixels, the height would be 30 pixels. All right, so let's try. Okay, 30 pixels maybe it's a little bit too much. Maybe 25 pixels. 25 pixels over here. I think 20 pixels should be enough. Yes, 20 pixels. Okay, so now in order to shift it, we have to minus 60 pixels and we have to bring it up. So we have to minus 10 pixels. Okay, so half of the height and half of the width. So coming back here, so center X we have to minus 60 and center Y we have to minus 10. Let's see. Alright, so now we have the container exactly in the middle. Okay, now is to change these values. Alright, so back to this. Alright, the values. Okay, how are we going to change the values? Well, we have to use trigonometry, and in fact we actually found the angle over here. Alright, for our when it's a single arrow line and a double arrow line, I think we can actually bring all this up here. Okay, get it all up over here. Alright, so now we have the angle. Okay, and what we just need to find is the length. Alright, and in order to find the length, we know the width and the height, the horizontal width and the vertical height of the line. So meaning, let's say over here, the horizontal width would be this. If let's say this is a right angled triangle, this is the horizontal width, and this will be the vertical height. Okay, for this right angled triangle. So in order to find this length, we can just use Pythagoras theorem. Alright, so if you do not know what that is, it's actually just a formula. Okay, a formula to find out the length of the line from a right angled triangle. Okay, and the formula is the sum of the square of the horizontal width and the square of the vertical height. And when we get the sum, we have to square root it. Okay, so we square root the sum and we get the length of the line. So let's do that first. So over here, let's say let length of line be equals to, so math dot square root. Alright, and to find the sum, and the power is 2. Okay, and the sum, we let the sum be equals to math dot not square root, is math dot, I believe it is power. Yes, power. Okay, math dot power, the width 2, and this should not be 2 here. Okay, so we square root the sum, and the sum is math dot, so it's the square of the width. Alright, and plus math dot power height. Okay, so the sum is the square of the width plus the square of the height, and we have the length of the line over here. So now this length of line, okay, we want it to not have so many significant figures. Alright, maybe at most, if we go over here, at most just 1 decimal place. Okay, so what we can do is we can say over here, alright, I gave the span of the length of the line to be this, alright, and this 1024. Now let's change this. Okay, so using the ID, and I say dot inner HTML would now be the length of line, and I want it to be only to 1 decimal place. Okay, but before we do that, let's just see what happens if we just do this. All right. Okay, as you can see, the length changes. Okay, but now it's very ugly. Okay, it's because there are so many significant figures over here. So I just want it to stop at 1 decimal place. So length of line dot to fixed 1. Okay, this means it's rounded to 1 decimal place. Now let's check. So now as you can see, the length is updated every time we move the mouse cursor. So we do the same for 280 degrees. Sorry, not 280 degrees. We do the same for the angle. All right, now the angle, okay, we have gotten it over here, and it's in the degree form. Okay, so now if we just change, okay, this value to something else, so angle of line dot inner HTML is equals to angle, and I want it to be to 1 decimal place only. Now if we just do this, okay, you realize this part is up to 90, but then it goes back down. All right, now it's your preference. Maybe you do not like this. Okay, maybe you like all the way up to 360. All right, so if you want to do that, so for instance, this over here, it starts from here, 0, all the way to 90, then it goes further all the way to 180, then 270, and then back to 0 again. So if you want this to happen, we have to add a few conditions. All right. So the first condition would be, let's say the endpoint. Okay, the endpoint is more, the S coordinate of the endpoint is more than the starting point S. So what we can do over here is I can change this to endpoint X. I can change this to endpoint Y. Okay, just to make it simpler. So this over here, okay, I can change all this to pointer dot, oops, sorry, this should be pointer dot X, which is endpoint X, and pointer dot Y, which is endpoint Y. Okay, and this line dot path, okay, this is the endpoint X, and this is endpoint Y. And I change this back. This is 1 over here. Okay, or you can use endpoint X here and endpoint X here, and this will be endpoint Y, endpoint Y. Okay, it does not matter much. All right. So now that we have this, okay, we have to set some conditions. So it depends on where the line is being drawn. Okay, let's say it's being drawn in this quadrant. So this quadrant, endpoint X is more than start point X, and endpoint Y is less than start point Y. Okay, so that is one condition. All right, we can, let me comment this out first. So if endpoint X is more than start point X. And further, if endpoint Y is less than endpoint, not endpoint, but start point Y. Alright, we want the angle to not be 24.1 degrees in this case. We want it to be 360 minus this angle. Alright, so it will be angle, and it will be 360 minus this angle, and is rounded to 1 decimal place. Okay, now there is another, or else if endpoint Y is more than endpoint, not endpoints, it should be start point Y. So meaning the line is drawn like this. Alright, so endpoint Y is more than start point Y. So for this case, alright, for this case, well, I realized that for this example, we start from 0 all the way to 360 in the anti-clockwise position. Okay, but if you choose for it to be in the clockwise position, so this should just be the angle, okay, and it's not 360 minus the angle with respect to a horizontal axis over here. All right, so it's your preference. Okay, so let's say for this case, it will just be the angle rounded off to 1 decimal place. All right, but maybe endpoint Y can be the same as start point Y. So there is another condition. Okay, equals. All right, so for this condition, it means that we have a line that is horizontal. Okay, so this should be 0. Okay, I did not adjust it a little bit more. So if this is horizontal, endpoint Y is the same as start point Y. So this should be 0. So we can say that this would be 0. I believe we should have a bracket like this. Alright, so let's check this out. So as you can see, we have 0. And if we want it to go in the anti-clockwise direction, okay, so we have 300 something degrees, and in the clockwise direction, so starting from 0, and the angle increases. All right, so we have to do the same for this, okay, for the other side. So let's do that. So if endpoint S is more than start point S, but if it's the other way around, so like this over here, endpoint X is less than start point X. So else if endpoint S is less than this, so we have these 3 conditions again. All right, so let's start with this part. So first, when it's like this, okay, when it's a horizontal, is 0. Then this must be 90, and this would be more than 90, but lesser than 180. Okay, it should be more than 90, lesser than 180. So endpoint Y would be more than start point Y. okay, for this particular line over here, endpoint y is more than start point y. So it's between 90 and 180. So it's angle, okay, the angle plus, it should be 180 minus the angle. Sorry, it should be 180 minus this angle. So if it's endpoint y less than start point y, but before we talk about this, let's see whether we are correct. So 0, okay, and as you can see, it increases steadily. Alright? Now we have to do something when it's vertical. Okay, when it's vertical, it must be 90 exactly. So let's do that. So when it's vertical, alright, there is another condition where endpoint x is the same as start point x. So let's have another condition here. Else, if endpoint x is equals to start point x. So based on this, we have, I think, 3 of these same conditions. Alright. So if endpoint y is more than start point y, okay, endpoint y is more than start point y, it must be 90. So this must be 90 over here. Now, if endpoint y is less than start point y, so it means this is the starting point. This should be the endpoint. So endpoint y is less than start point y. And that would be 270 degrees. Right, so this over here is 270. And if endpoint y is the same as start point y, so it means it's actually just a dot. We say 0. Okay, now back to this. If endpoint x is less than start point x, and endpoint y is less than start point y, so it means it's the line like this. Alright, so endpoint y is less than start point y, so it must be 180 plus the angle. 180 plus the angle. And if endpoint y is equals to start point y, it means this. Okay, it must be 180 degrees. So we have 180. Alright. With all these conditions, let's test it out. So starting from 0, and then we have 90, 180, 270, back to 0. Okay, and that is how we do the length and the angle. So let's try for the arrow line. Okay, so same thing. But take note, for the arrow lines, alright, the length, it refers to only the starting point over here and the starting point, the ending point of the line, not the tip of the arrow. Okay, because I only considered the starting point of the line and the ending point of the line and not the tip of the arrow. So if you want it to be at the tip of the arrow, you have to do more calculations, which I will just leave it up to you, okay, to do that. All right, so for now, okay, we have our angle container, and when we deactivate, okay, we want this to disappear as well, and we can do it. Okay, let me remove this over first, and we can do it. Let's see, where can we do it? Okay, so we can do it on the function where we click the deactivate button. So deactivate mouse events, and this would be none. All right, so let's try it. Okay, I forgot to refresh. Okay, so as you can see, right, everything looks all right. Okay, if I deactivate, the container disappears and we have our lines. Okay, so in the next video, we will talk about how to add control points and redraw the line. So meaning, let's say if I have a double arrow like this, and I want to redraw this, okay, so I want it to be pointing at a different direction. I just double click on it, and I have two control points over here, so I can change the angle and the length as well. So we will do this in the next video. Bye bye.